We're about to bring you an update to a story that we have been covering for some time, and it focuses on a Georgia grandfather and a U.S. Army veteran, Godfrey Wade, who has been held in immigration detention for months. His detention began after a September traffic stop in Conyers for failing to signal. Our investigative reporter, Savannah Levins, has been covering this case very closely for months. Let's set the background now. We're going to play you her first report from December that introduces us to Godfrey Wade and his case.
This is Godfrey's birthday gift. He's a Scrabble aficionado.
In his Covington home.
Oh, is it my turn? Okay, you got the O.
Godfrey Wade's presence is loud.
You make me so very happy.
His absence
This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
is louder.
Press 1 to accept the call.
Hey.
ICE detained Godfrey in September after Conyers PD pulled him over for not using a turn signal and arrested him for driving without a license. His fiancée April recorded this video as he was taken away in handcuffs.
He wasn't born in this country, and yet and still he loves this country enough that he signed up to serve it. And so 50 years later, when he needs this country is turning its back on him.
Godfrey came to the U.S. from Jamaica when he was 15 and joined the U.S. Army a few years later. A lot of people will watch stories like these and say, well, why didn't he just become a citizen?
We were in the process of becoming a citizen.
She says they frankly weren't too worried until recently. In 2022, under the Biden administration, ICE issued a directive ordering ICE agents to take into account a person's U.S. military service when deciding whether to deport someone. But 11 Alive News Investigates obtained an ICE memo issued in April of this year, rescinding that directive. It upholds some protections for active duty military, but explicitly states, quote, an honorable discharge does not prevent an alien from being subject to immigration enforcement. Earlier this year, Georgia Senators John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock and Representative Hank Johnson joined a coalition of 60 Democratic members of Congress demanding the federal government compile a list of service members and veterans who have been detained or deported in 2025. It asked for the list by September 16th. When 11 Alive requested that information, we were told it was never provided.
He doesn't deserve what he's experiencing right now.
Godfrey's 6 children and 3 grandchildren now cherish each phone call as he remains detained.
If I didn't believe that this country is still great, I wouldn't want to stay here. This country is a great country. I've shed my blood for this country.
Godfrey says he wasn't assigned a case agent until 55 days into his detention. He has no idea when or if he may get a day in court.
I haven't gone to see a judge. They're saying that my situation is final.
Oh, and just like that, he's gone. They ended the call. But randomly, the calls will just end.
Have you come to terms with what you might do if he ends up being deported?
I have not. I don't want to get emotional about it, but it's hard. It's like, what am I going to do? Where is all his, oh crap. Sorry.
She still hopes an exception will be made and Godfrey will walk back through their front door.
Pulling out the Scrabble board and everyone playing Scrabble blues.
So she's keeping the board on the table.
I'm so glad you
and the lights on, just in case. Savannah Levins, 11 Alive News Investigates.
Our Savannah Levins joining us now here in the streaming center. Savannah, that was your report from December. Where do things stand now?
Well, that story that you just watched caught the attention of an Atlanta immigration attorney, Tony Kaczynski. He ended up reaching out to the family and is now representing Godfrey. He has since filed an appeal for Godfrey's removal. So basically the issue that happened here is Godfrey Wade had a standing order for removal, meaning he was going to be deported. So when he was pulled over for this failure to signal and arrested for driving without a license, he's transferred to ICE custody. And they say, well, you were supposed to show up to this immigration hearing in 2014 and you never did. so there's an order for your removal. So you're not going to a judge this time. You're staying in detention, and then we're going to deport you straight away. He said, well, wait a minute. I never knew there was, a hearing in 2014. When did that happen? Well, his legal team now says that they have since found out that those notices were sent to an old address of his, and in fact, they have found records that they were returned to sender, returned to the court as undeliverable. So his attorney now has appealed the decision for the removal, arguing he never had the chance to make his case, and he never knew about this. He didn't skip it on purpose. So at least now, let the decision be made on the merits of his circumstances rather than a technicality. So that's where things stood. Now, I mean, the immigration courts right now are so backed up. They didn't have a ton of hope of that happening expeditiously. And now, unfortunately, for Godfrey, his attorney says he has now been placed this week on a flight manifest to Jamaica, his birth country, meaning he's likely to be deported.
This week.
This week. They believe by the end of this week. Now, the specific details of what day, what hour aren't releasable even to their own attorneys for security reasons. But they believe by the end of this week, which of course would cause a lot of delays in their appeal process. ICE and the Department of Homeland Security really prioritizes the cases of people being currently held in detention. But if Godfrey, is deported to Jamaica, they estimate it could set back that process 3 to 4 years. And again, he hasn't lived in Jamaica for more than 50 years. His family, his 4 children, 2 grandchildren, all live here in Georgia. I spoke with Tony Kaczynski, his attorney, yesterday, and they said right now their Hail Mary, Zach, is trying to get the support of legislators to reach out to Kristi Noem, to DHS, to the Department of Homeland Security. Here's what he told me about that.
Congressman David Scott's office is leading the charge for us, which we're very much appreciative of. He is Godfrey's local representative, and we have been seeking and receiving some letters directed from representatives and senators here in the United States to the Department of Homeland Security, voicing their support, asking the department to exercise its own discretion, which is what they lawfully possess, to allow this case to be reopened and re-examined on the merits of the case, and not allow this address technicality to remove a United States Army veteran from this country and from his family.
So, Savannah, this is the last couple days of opportunity for this appeal to get its day in court before he is deported.
Yeah, and to be honest, again, this was really a Hail Mary, these legislators reaching out and petitioning for him to have a hearing. Unlikely that's going to happen. I mean, he could be on a plane right now.
Let me ask you this, Savannah, a couple of questions here. You mentioned in your first piece that Mr. Wade was initially detained on a traffic violation. Does he have any other criminal record?
Yes, that's a great question. So, I think a lot of the confusion is that the traffic arrest was the reason he was being deported. That's not the case. In fact, the reason that he missed that 2014 hearing, that hearing was called for a reason, right? For many decades, he was here in the United States on a green card.
This was the 2014 immigration hearing.
Exactly. So why did that 2014 immigration hearing happen? Well, there were 2 cases. One was a bounce check that he wrote for a car registration. He said he just didn't realize he didn't have the funds. And another one was a domestic case involving his ex-wife, in which some plates were thrown, things like that. There weren't any allegations of physical abuse. I read through the police reports, but he took a plea deal for simple assault, and that is what triggered that hearing in 2014 that he never showed up for. So that is really the reason that he's being deported, and those cases were from the early 2000s.
Last question for you here, Savannah, as we're closing out on time here. What has been, if anything, the response from federal authorities?
None. I asked that very question. I said, has DHS even acknowledged receipt of these emails from these legislators? And his attorney says no. As far as we know, they haven't acknowledged it. They believe they're aware of it just because of how it's been in the news, but no acknowledgement as of this moment.
All right, our Savannah Levins, I know you will continue to follow this case closely and any developments that may still come up in the next couple days. Savannah, thank you.
Thanks, Zach.